We've got our speaker today, Alan Zucker. He's a senior instructor with Velocity. Alan also developed a lean, agile e-learning course available on Insight. He has an undergraduate degree from George Washington University and a master's degree in economics from the University of Maryland. Welcome.
Thank you. So it's wonderful to be back. It's sort of like a victory lap to come out to Maryland and present. Although my degree was in economics, I did that for a few years and then cut over to project management because I liked it a lot better. Today we're going to talk about lean and how do we improve our work using the principles of lean. So this is a half-hour slide. Usually I get at least an hour to talk. And I was thinking, my God, what am I going to talk about how am I going to talk about lean for just a half an hour? And I remembered an old Jewish tradition. The tradition goes back that Rabbi Akiva, and this goes back 3,000 years, a man came to the Rabbi Akiva and said, how do I learn the Torah, how do I learn the Bible while standing on one foot? And the rabbi knew that it was a trap. He said, the key lesson is that don't do to your neighbor what you would be hateful to you. And so I'm thinking about, well, what's the key lesson behind lean? And so lean is about creating value. And if you focus on creating value, everything else is practices. And I've got the Tai Chi symbol there, the man doing Tai Chi. I've been practicing Tai Chi for almost 30 years now. And when I went to my first Tai Chi class, the instructor said, you are now masters. At the end of the class, he said, you are now big potatoes. And for the rest of your lives, you will strive to become masters again. And the reason I tell that parable is that becoming lean and learning these practices is not a one and done. It's something that we strive on an ongoing basis. Because you never get there, it's just a constant journey. So, one of the most important things I said is value. What is value? What is your definition of value? Anybody? Somebody?
Money.
Money.
Quality.
Quality.
Return on investment.
Return on investment. I heard time over here. Lean is, when we talk about lean is about what our customers want, what our customers value. So I started my career working for the United States Department of the Treasury. I ran the Treasury Securities Auctions for a number of years and had the opportunity to visit the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And when you're on the inside and you go to visit the Fed New York, they take you on the tour. And they took me down to the gold vaults. The Fed New York has, I think it's over $1 trillion, well over $1 trillion in gold. It's about 42,000 bars of gold. Each one of those bars is worth about $50,000. All it is a piece of metal. Why is it worth $1,200 an ounce? Went one floor below, and there was the money counting machines. And when you go to see the money counting machines, they also have the machines, they shred the old bills. You can go buy a satchel of bills, of shredded bills like that, for about 50 cents as a souvenir. So they worked out something that's valued. So people value gold. Maybe that's something that people used to value, which is money, and now you get it just for scrap paper. When we think of value, we want to know what provides value to our customers. So how do we define what that is? First of all, who are our customers? And a lot of us, particularly if we're in project management, we're really far away from our end customers, really from the end users. I mean, I spent years managing financial systems in companies. So I was very far away from the end consumers, but you want to understand who are your customers? What do they want? What provides value to them? Because a lot of times what we find is what we think is value to our customers, when we go out and actually meet with them and have conversations, we find out that we're dead wrong, that our assumptions about what's important to our customers is just inaccurate. So how do we find out? Have conversations. One of the tools we'll talk about is value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is a way of identifying what provides value and what provides waste. We'll give a quick tutorial on that. And prioritization. We want to think about work differently. We want to do the things that provide the greatest value first and deliver them quickly. That's part of the process. So there's 7 principles of lean, and I'm going to go through them because it's the bedrock, it's the foundation. The first one is eliminating waste. So we want to identify what provides value, and really anything else is a form of waste, and we want to eliminate waste over time. We're going to incrementally improve. Second, we want to deliver value, we want to deliver as fast as possible, which means we want to deliver value as quickly as possible. When we deliver things more quickly, it increases our return on investment. The sooner you have something that's generating money, just mathematically, the higher your return on investment is going to be. Rather have $1 today than $1 10 years from now. We want to build integrity in. Building integrity in means that we are creating quality. We're creating quality products, and we're creating quality along the way. We want to make sure that as we are creating things, that what we're passing along to the next person in the line is of the highest possible quality. What we find is that the further away from the point of creation you find an error, the cost of fixing it goes up exponentially. And that's one of the other reasons we want to build integrity. We want to empower the team. One of the fundamental principles of lean, of agile, of actually most modern management practices today is empowering the team. One of the things we need to realize as managers and project managers is that the people that work for us are at least as skilled and at least as smart as us. Probably the same level of education as we've had. But when we don't empower them, when we do not unleash that creative energy, we're sub-optimizing for our whole organization. So we want to empower the team because there's a lot of innovation and a lot of good ideas that can come from the team. We want to be able to see the whole. By seeing the whole, we understand the entire process from end to end. And by understanding the process from end to end, and everybody having that knowledge, we're able to make sure that we're not just optimizing our step in the line, we're optimizing the entire value stream. One of the things we typically see is, when people are working on a process line, is that someone will speed up their piece of work and just move things over to the next piece. And what do we see? We see work stacking up. That's a form of waste. We want to amplify learning. By amplifying learning, we make sure that everybody on the team understands the best practices. They know the best way to do the work. It's a way of creating a stronger, more resilient organization. And the last principle is deciding as late as possible. By deciding as late as possible, or as it's often said, deciding at the last responsible moment, we're able to not spend a lot of time planning and wasting energy or wasting effort on things that may change. And depending on what you're working on, there's a lot of change. If you're working on technology changes very quickly. Requirements change quickly. Even when you're building buildings, where we don't think about using these kinds of principles, you want to make the decision at the last moment. It avoids unnecessary effort. When we talk about waste in a classical sense, lean came from Toyota, lean manufacturing. We usually think about waste in terms of a manufacturing model. We usually think about scrap and inventory and things that you can physically see. When we talk about knowledge work, we need to think about waste in a different way. The thing that makes it more difficult in knowledge work is waste becomes more invisible. You don't see a pile of scrap by the side of the factory. You don't see inventory stacking up along the production line. And this is stuff that came from the DevOps handbook, which is actually a really great read. It's not a technical read. But the first form is partial work. Partial work is things that we've started working on, but that we haven't completed. Until a project is done, it hasn't created value. When you're working on a presentation, on a budget, on a report, on a piece of analysis, until that's delivered and something comes of that, it doesn't represent value. So partial work is a form of waste. Extra features are another form of waste. How many of you work in applications development or technology? out there. Okay, wild guess. What percent of features built into enterprise software are either rarely used or never used? Anybody want to take a guess? 70, 80, a little bit high. It's about 60, it's 40 to 60% of the features in our enterprise software are never used or rarely used. What does that mean? It means that the time spent developing those features could have been used to develop things of a higher priority, things that would have created more value. So we want to avoid developing extra features. Who here works in a hero culture? Anybody? Anybody work in a hero culture? A culture that favors the individual over the team? You've seen it happen. Problem happens, there's going to be the one person with the S across their chest that's going to solve the problem, and everybody else is like, well, we'll just go out for coffee because Tom's going to fix that problem. When we have a hero culture, it's waste. You've got one person that's solving the problem, and everybody else is sitting around watching. You also have a culture where you've got the rest of the team demotivated or unmotivated. Defects are a form of waste. As we just mentioned, the cost of fixing, the cost of bad work, the cost of repair, rework, increases exponentially the further away from the source. So we want to minimize the defects because the cost rises. Waiting, motion, handoffs, extra processes, huge forms of waste. A lot of us work in organizations where we put people into their specialized skill sets. Where if we want to do a piece of work, or if you want to get your PC fixed to work, what do? You submit a ticket. You probably wait a day and a half, maybe 2 days, for the tech to come, spends an hour fixing your machine. All that time that you were down, that's wasted time. One of the things we want to focus on is bringing the people together that can create a piece of value. It reduces the amount of waiting, the amount of handoffs from one group to the next. One of the greatest killers, the hidden killers of productivity, is task switching. It's estimated that there's a 20 to 40% loss in productivity when we go from working on one task to the next task. When we think about that on a large level, if you're a project manager and you're working on one project, you're working 40 hours on that project. When you're working on 2 projects, you're not working 20 hours on each of the projects. You've lost at least 8 hours to task switching. By the time you get to 3 projects that you're juggling, you're now spending more time task switching than you are actually working on any of the individual projects. And that's at a macro level, how we task switch. At a micro level, one of the greatest wasters of time is multitasking. We do not multitask. The human brain switches from one task to the next. Rescue Time is a really cool piece of software. You can download it, and I'm not a stockholder, but you can download it and it will track your work and help you improve. They estimate that 40% of people's working time is wasted task switching, going from one task to the other. One of the true hidden killers in terms of productivity is emails or chats or Slack. It's estimated that 70% of the emails are opened within 6 seconds. We also lose productivity because, essentially, at least every 11 minutes, people are task switching and going from one thing to the next. So what do we do about that? How do we reduce our multitasking? One of the easiest ways, turn off your email notifications. Turn off the buzz when it comes in. Turn off the icon when it comes in the upper right-hand corner. Turn off the notifications on your watch. I got to tell you, nothing drives me more crazy than when I'm talking to somebody and they're always going like this, looking at their watch. They lose the concentration. They lose the flow of that conversation that we're having. So just turn it off. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about value stream mapping, and this is just going to be enough to get you to be dangerous. But what we want to do is we want to think about the things that we're producing. We're going to categorize those efforts into things that are primary, things that are required to create that good or service, things that are supporting, and those could either be mandatory things or things that are best practices, And then there's the things that just create waste. So if you're producing software, primary process of producing software are a lot of things. Design, build, test, deploy. Simple enough. We're going to design something, we're going to code it, we're going to test it, and then we'll deploy it. That's to create the simple value stream. Some of the things that may be either enabling or mandatory are project schedules. It's a really good idea to have a project schedule. It doesn't have to be too detailed, but you want to have some kind of plan. Risk management is another valuable thing. And a lot of us don't think about risk management, and it ends up biting us at the end of our projects. The next icon, we want to have documentation, and the threshold there that we'll use is minimally sufficient documentation. What is the amount of documentation we need in order to get the job done? We need some documentation, but we don't need stacks of it. Stand-up meetings. A daily stand-up meeting is a very efficient, effective way of quickly communicating status among the team, making sure that the work is being handed off from one person to the next, as well as identifying and resolving issues. And finally, demonstrations, product demonstrations, are a valuable way of getting feedback from our customers. Things that represent waste, we've got our complicated status reports. I was working on a project, or actually someone on my team was once managing a project. It was going to be an agile project. 3 times a week, where they had 3 status meetings each week. One at the management level, one at the director level, and then one at the officer level. The first meeting was 2 hours. The second meeting was 2 hours. The third meeting, thankfully, was only an hour. They had a 50-page deck. This was supposed to be an agile project. All that was wasted effort. Approvals are another major form of waste. I managed financial reporting systems, and at a certain point, my technology team was outsourced to a major supplier. And all of a sudden, they said, "Alan, you need to sign off on the requirements documents." Like, how come? We've been working together for about 5 years at this point. More or less, our projects are successful. Haven't signed off on a requirements document yet. That's the way we do things. It's like, well, we don't have to do it. And we did it. And you know what? We still delivered good software without me approving those documents. Excessive documentation. Well, how much documentation do you need to do your project, and how much of it is just unnecessary? Delays are another major form of waste. We're waiting for somebody to complete a job, or we're waiting for some parts and materials to come in. And the last time killer is excessive meetings. I always hear people say, "I got too many meetings." And cut them back. By doing a value stream map, you can identify the things that create value: design, build, test, deploy, and the things that enable that value creation. And everything else, just stop doing it and see what happens. The other thing is using Kanban. By using Kanban, it allows us to focus on what creates value. The first thing we want to do is when we create our Kanban board is visualize the flow. What is the flow of work? And when we do a Kanban board, you've got a backlog. And that's the work that needs to be done. We have our process steps, and then we have our done column. Next thing we do is we prioritize work. It's really easy to do this with Post-it notes on a wall. And we lay our work out in priority order, 1 through N, in this case 1 through 6. The reason we do that is we always want to be focusing on the work that provides the most value next. We keep pulling work off the top of the stack. We don't go to the middle of the stack because something is easy or it's small. Always focus on the things that provide value. We're going to limit work in process. We're going to limit the number of things that we can work on at one time because that reduces multitasking. It allows us to deliver things more quickly. One of the expressions I like to use is, it doesn't matter how many planes we put in the air, it's the number of planes that we're landing that counts. So we want to focus on finishing work, not starting work. We want to pull work across the process. By pulling work across the process, we're minimizing the backup of work, the stacking up of work, creates an even flow of work. Finally, we want to set policies. We want to describe and articulate and document what it means to be ready to start working on things and what it means to be done each of the various steps. That helps us build quality into the process because we're making sure that the work is ready to be worked, that everybody understands what it is, and that we're making sure that all the work is done before we move it on to the next piece. And finally, we want to improve continuously. We want to use the plan, do, check, act process. We're going to plan a piece of work, we're going to execute it, we're going to get some measures and metrics, then we're going to adjust, and we're going to execute the process again. If you're working in an agile environment, we're usually doing this every 2 to 4 weeks. If you're in a non-agile environment, figure out what the right cadence is for you. So, as we mentioned earlier, I've been instructor with Velocity, and I'm really excited. I just actually finished putting together a 4.5-hour one-line training, which is the fundamentals of Agile. And I actually need to correct this slide. If you go to that webpage, velociteach.com, PM Symposium 2019, you actually will get 50% off on the e-learning. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Mike's coming.